I mean, we truly understand that we're part of a broader ecosystem, and it's not just about building tools and throwing them over the wall. It's about having a data-driven culture, making the company AI ready. There's just a lot of different ways, the way we drive this culture forward, so folks understand what the art of the possible is with these solutions.
Welcome to Technovation. I'm your host, Peter High. My guest today is Don Vu. Don is the Chief Data and Analytics Officer of New York Life, a 180-year-old mutual life insurance company. Don's been in his role for a year and a half, and in that time, he's helped advance the company's data strategy, including more broad usage of artificial intelligence, among other areas of progress. He's a seasoned data executive, having been a prior chief data officer at Northwestern Mutual. He also led data and analytics at WeWork and at Major League Baseball Advanced Media. Don, welcome to Technovation. It's great to speak with you today.
Hey, Peter, thanks so much for having me.
No, it's a great pleasure. Well, Don, why don't we begin with your role? Actually, let's begin with your company, if you don't mind. I mentioned a brief overview, and many, of course, who would be listening or watching this would have heard of New York Life. But in your own words, I'd love an overview of the business if you'd provide that.
Yeah, no, I'm really fortunate and grateful to be at New York Life as their Chief Data and Analytics Officer. So New York Life's a Fortune 78 company. It's the nation's largest mutual life insurance company with over $1 trillion of individual life insurance in force. It's a mutual, which means it's owned by its policyholders, not Wall Street. You could argue it's the most customer-centric corporate structure that's out there. We're incredibly resilient. We have over 175 plus years of experience in service, as you alluded to. And even though we've been around for quite some time, we embrace technology, data, and AI to deliver exceptional experiences. So a lot of folks don't realize all the amazing things that we're doing with technology, data, and AI. So excited to have the opportunity to share that with you in the audience.
Yeah, looking forward to diving further into those details, Don. Why don't you talk a bit about your purview, if you would, as the Chief Data and Analytics Officer?
Yeah, so in my role, I actually have ownership for our strategy and the execution of our AI and data strategy. And I intentionally mentioned both of those together. I think one of the things that we reflected on is it was really critically important, and those two things were so inextricably linked. And that really starts with kind of a rewind to our business strategy. So about 2.5 years ago, our CEO, Craig DeSanto, became the CEO of the organization. He reoriented New York Life to be more focused on client and agent experience. Previously, there was a bit more focus on sales of each of the individual financial products, so like long-term care, disability, whole life. And Craig recognized that we really need to hone in on client and agent experience, have a consistent experience no matter what products that you have a more seamless and integrated journey across all of them. And what really is a necessity as you shift towards that customer-centric strategy is a solid foundation that's consistent across all of those for data, and then leveraging AI to activate an experience in a proactive way across all of them. And so when that shift in that area of focus really came to bear, that's when that's when I was brought on board. So about 15 months ago was when I joined. And again, the goal was really to elevate our efforts, make them more synergistic, and have them be complementary to our shift in business strategy.
Very interesting. And fast, it must have been heartening to join an organization that had taken an emphasis like that. But I can only imagine, since you were joining on the heels of that conclusion by Craig and the executive team, that it was the beginning of a journey naturally. Talk a bit about the organization you found 15 months ago and some of the initial work that you and your team undertook to advance that program, if you would.
Yeah, it's been such an amazing journey. I think one of the things that people might presume about life insurance that is kind of a slow and sleepy sort of situation when you're joining a company, and I've actually found the opposite. One of the things that's been super exciting is since Craig is driving this transformation pervasively throughout the organization, it spans the business, it spans all functional areas of the organization. Really, there's been a shift more towards what we call value streams. And the way that we actually have, technology, data, and AI shifting alongside that makes it all, flow synergistically all along the way. There's a bit of a flywheel effect. I think folks are accustomed to having be agile in so many different dimensions. So adding in generative AI, adding in a new way of leveraging data, fortunately hasn't been too hard to add that into the ecosystem. So yeah, I've been pleasantly surprised at the speed and agility of the organization.
That's really fantastic. Can you talk a bit about now at the present times, how you've thought about the data strategy itself? Talk a bit about where things stand now, and now here relatively early in 2025, where you're focused from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, when I came here, it was fortunate to see that we'd already started some aspects of a data modernization strategy. We really leaned into data science for quite some time. I thought the opportunity was really to kind of evolve those and bring them together, and take things to the next level. And so maybe we'll just start from like the top note of our AI and data strategy, and really what our mission is to activate the power of New York Life's data through enterprise AI and data products and solutions. And really, we want to do that to deliver business impact. That really is our mission, and that's really our North Star. And we do that with a few key pillars. So, the first and foremost, we think about the data foundation. And that's not just platforms, that's really people, process, and tech. We fully understand that we need to have the right, talent in place with the right skills. We need to have the right operating model to engage with the business, and then we need the right platforms and technology to make all of that happen. So that's pillar one, our data foundation. The second one is around AI intelligence and analytical insights. We need to have these AI capabilities. We need to, of course, have insights and as table stakes. So those capabilities just need to continue to develop and be more robust. And as we all know, the landscape of AI capabilities changes so quickly. So we knew we needed to proactively and continuously address that. The third pillar is around culture. I mean, we truly understand that we're part of a broader ecosystem, and it's not just about building tools and throwing them over the wall. It's about having a data-driven culture, making the company AI ready. So the cultural aspects, whether it's driven through like things like hackathons, and we have a data, AI, and analytics expo. There's just a lot of different ways the way we drive this culture forward, so folks understand what the art of the possible is with these solutions. And then finally, the fourth pillar is, customer advisor experience. We really, in some ways, it's repetitive because we always remain anchored to the business strategy as a whole. But given just the focus on having holistic understanding of our customers and clients, of being proactive in the experience that we provide them through all channels, both online and offline, we really wanted to make sure that highlight as that is one of our pillars. So yeah, I think that's the way we think about it.
I'd be fascinated. You mentioned, of course, now a couple different times, customer experience, advisor experience. As you think about the various constituents whose experience you are impacting, how do you think about the synergies across those? I'm sure there are some aspects to that that are common. Naturally, of course, those are different constituents, one serving the other. Talk a bit about how you gain insights to decipher what can be done commonly to serve each, but also what needs to be done independently, given the differences between them.
Yeah, no, I think that's one of the interesting challenges that we have. So if you look at what we've seen as like the customer journey and kind of the moments that matter along that journey, one of the things that we've observed is around two-thirds of them are through our advisors and through the agents that actually sell our products. There's only like a relatively smaller subset that for which they're engaging directly with our organization or with our applications and digital ecosystem. And so that's been an interesting thing to navigate. In some ways, our advisors and the folks that are in the field and talking to the clients every day are like reflect our customers' experience itself. So we've definitely been mindful of that balance and serving both of those interfaces. And in some ways, it's we consider that an opportunity and just a natural part of our business. So yeah.
And talk a bit about the team that's around you, if you would, Don. How have you, I assume, of course, some of them pre-exist your time with the organization. I would also imagine you've hired some folks as well. How have you
Yeah.
thought about building out your team?
Yeah, I'll start with my team, and start, and then I'll maybe also add some like key collaborators in the enterprise that we have that help us be successful. But I would say first and foremost, we have our chief data officer who's hired, a gentleman named Vikas Sharma. He leads both data engineering and governance, and that was an intentional move. Oftentimes, I think data governance is perceived to be a headwind and something that essentially is an anchor to providing business value. So as data governance has evolved, I think being metadata driven, being embedded in our pipelines, being embedded in the way that we actually operate engineering wise, that's really critical to our next horizon. So, Vikas is leading that charge on that. We have a chief data science officer, Alan BM, who's, leading our data scientists, our AI talent, AI COE, machine learning. So that's another key leader on the team. We built an AI and data product organization. So that's not something that's not in every org, but certainly something that I feel has been really, really critical to our success. So Achuth Rao is on our leadership team there, and he's done a remarkable job building this new discipline within the organization. Strategic insights is something that we we're very intentional about. One of the challenges of having a large organization with a lot of analytics that are more locally focused, you need to make sure that you have like a broad enterprise perspective. So we have a strategic insights team led by Tali Rosenblum, and great work being done there. And then finally, we have a head of operations. So obviously, everything just needs to kind of flow and work together seamlessly. So we're grateful to have Deb Grace leading the charge there. Really, really fortunate to have a great mix of leaders that have been here for some time that really have great understanding of the intricacies of the organization and have a ton of institutional knowledge, and having them joined by some external perspective that maybe have some fresh eyes. It's been really, really, really great for us.
That's really great. Yeah. And as you note, it's a role and demand that is such that it spans across the very complex organization that is New York Life. Can you talk further about how you interact with your colleagues more broadly speaking?
Yeah, no, thanks for coming back to that. So one of the things that's been really impactful for us is to have our teams be embedded into our business partners and the delivery teams. So, we have what we call value streams. So different parts of the client or agent experience. There's 6 of them. We have one value stream that's most focused on what we call the client prospecting. So call it the pre-client sort of part of the journey. We have the purchase experience, which then is when people go through underwriting and actually apply for our products and put in applications. The next phase is about service, and it's almost like a retention sort of part of the world as well, that part of the journey. And then we have a couple of value streams that are related to our agent and advisor experience, and another one around product. The reason I mention that is because we're very intentional about the way that we organize our enterprise in order to make sure that it's mapped towards those pieces of the journey. And then we map both business, tech, data, and AI all within those sleeves, all aligned towards objectives and key results. And we found that to be a very powerful alignment mechanism strategically.
Yeah, I really like the way you described that. Thank you for that overview. You've mentioned, understandably, the role and the ascent of artificial intelligence, and obviously a tremendous amount of innovation that's happening. It seems like every week there's new advancements, new companies emerging, et cetera. And as you think about that broader ecosystem, I'm wondering how you and the team remain abreast of progress there, and the methods you use to test new solutions as they arise, to determine whether there's applicability or not, as the case may be. How do you think about that external lens?
I mean, I've been really grateful that we've had so much support, and there's been such a great push, even from the top, from our CEO, to really meet the moment with generative AI. And so from the beginning, we've been very intentional about making sure that it was properly funded, understanding that we had to have the appropriate guardrails, but more so to be a paved road to allow for learning, experimentation, and seeing where we can get traction. We were very intentional about having partnerships with leaders in the space. So folks like OpenAI and AWS and Anthropic, to name just a few. We really ensure that, and that's one of the ways that we make sure that we're running fast and running towards the edge of where things are going. And then as quickly as we can, we leverage our AI strategy steering committee, which might sound like it's a heavy governance body, but we've actually found it to be a facilitator for us actually bringing value to the business and iterating and learning and trying pilots and proofs of concept. And that's really worked for us really well. And to the extent that a bunch of the pilots that we've been working through in key areas like service and claims have made it to production, and they're scaling. And it's been really, really fun to see how quickly that whole process has been able to flow end to end.
I'd love to, if you don't mind, is the last part of your response there brings to mind, kind of what's possible and what's coming. Can you talk a bit more about some of the things that you and the team are working on? What has you most excited about potential applications to the business more broadly?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think we learned a lot. I mean, we've had some success, a bunch of successful initiatives. We have some that aren't as successful, and we've learned from all of them, which has been great. I think one of the things that we've learned, and it makes us excited about the next frontier, is we put some good scaffolding in place to kind of navigate things like change management and the last mile challenges that we've stubbed our toes on and learned a bunch on in our earlier chapters of our journey. And this next frontier is going to be great. I would say that, agents, of course, are top of mind for so many folks, and we've seen them manifest in more vertical manifestations with folks like Salesforce and Microsoft. And of course, there's folks like Anthropic and OpenAI who are exploring those capabilities in a more horizontal way. So that's something that, we of course have our eye on and are leaning into. I think one interesting second order consideration is once you start, having labor as software and you have digital teammates alongside human ones, how does that change how organizations are designed and in kind of key areas like software engineering? How does that really change the way, that discipline evolves? And so those are things that we're mindful of.
Exciting to remain abreast of continued progress as that evolves. I wanted to ask you, I mentioned at the outset, you are a seasoned data and analytics leader. You've been involved in one way, shape, or form for 25 years or so. And I'd love your perspectives on how these roles have evolved. I mean, when you got involved in the early stages, the taxonomy wasn't fully developed. Of course, the technology and the power systems were not where they are today, and therefore, relatively speaking, quite rudimentary. And yet, progress continued to be marshaled along the way. And I'm sure your now nearly quarter of a century of experience here is invaluable as you have that perspective to understand about where things stand, but also how much further we have to go. Talk a bit about the evolution of these roles, if you would.
No, thanks for teeing that up. Gosh, it's funny, quarter century, but I do remember moving to New York in 1999 during the first internet startup boom. I was a data engineer at a company that was a startup that actually built other startups. And I still recall, big refrigerator size servers and installing Oracle and all that good stuff. So to now be in the moment that we're at, it's pretty remarkable. And along the way, like the nature of data leadership has changed quite a bit. I do recall when the chief data officer role first came about, it was really started as a more of like a defensive posture. It came out of like a more of like financial services and like kind of the banking industry. And so things like data governance and ensuring that we had the appropriate guardrails was really the primary area of focus. And over time, certainly this notion of morphing towards the chief data analytics officer and towards the notion of value creation, that's been really a major shift that's been very, very obvious. It's pretty well known that the average tenure of a chief data officer is like 18 months or something like that, which in contrast to a lot of other C-suite roles is much shorter. And I think it's partially because of this shift. I think previously, although perhaps like the defense aspect of things was sufficient, the value creation needs, really necessitated a shift. And now with AI and generative AI, of course, that makes it even more palpable. But the one thing I would say is I really find, and this is why I say all the time that I feel very fortunate to be a data leader in this moment in time, but the wave of generative AI has really put a spotlight on so many different aspects of being a data leader that perhaps weren't as sexy before, but now business leaders really crave and understand they're important. So things like data quality, things like data, ownership. These are things that previously were not particularly, top of mind for folks. But now when you start to take unstructured data and you build like a RAG app on top of it or knowledge management, when you have poor data quality, you start getting poor answers. It becomes very clear just how critical that is. So that's been a neat thing to see.
I know one of the key stops along the way was one that I mentioned in the intro, and that was through Major League Baseball. And I'd love to. I mean, there's no sport, certainly no American sport that is as data centric across the years as is baseball. Talk a bit further about the application to such a data rich environment. Some of the early advancements that you were describing in a role like the one you took on with MLB.
Oh gosh, I mean, certainly I feel very grateful to have been able to work for our national pastime. So I was at Major League Baseball Advanced Media for 13 years. I didn't think I'd work for an organization older than Major League Baseball, but I found one in New York Life. My time at MLB Advanced Media was amazing. It was from 2005 to 2018. For those who aren't aware, MLB Advanced Media is is an entity that owns the consolidated digital rights of all 30 baseball clubs. So as a data leader, that meant that I had the benefit of Conway's Law and all 30 baseball clubs data was all in one place. They built a video streaming platform that they white labeled for properties like HBO and WWE, and it ultimately got bought by Disney for $3.5 billion in the back end of Disney Plus. So you can imagine, like over that time, seeing large scale data. I mean, true big data, having to deal with high velocity streaming data and build machine learning models for things like churn and recommendation engines. It truly was, a data geek's dream of, self-professed data geek, an incredible opportunity. And I'm, grateful for everything I learned there.
Well, we've talked a bit about quite a bit about, in fact, the advancements in data analytics and artificial intelligence. I wonder, are there other trends that come to mind, whether business trends, people trends, technology trends that particularly excite you as you look into your crystal ball and look forward to the future?
Yeah, I mean, I think for sure AI has been the main thing on my mind, and maybe this is a bit of a different slant, but I think AI in the educational space is something that I really, stay close to. I'm a father of two kids. My kids are 10 and 12. I also still continue to advise my alma mater, the University of Virginia, and the School of Business, the McIntyre School of Commerce. And it's really clear to me how education is going to be irrevocably changed with AI. One article that came out recently, I think it was just in the last few days, was around a study that the World Bank did, where they gave, one subset of students an AI tutor that was supplemented by a human teacher, and they did a pretty rigorous like A/B test, and it showed that 2 years of learning in 6 weeks using an AI tutor versus the control of folks that didn't. And I'm not trying to be Pollyannish about it. I know there's plenty of things to be mindful of with respect to AI. But when I see my kids leveraging the tool and imagining them grow up with these things natively, it's hard not to imagine like all the amazing possibilities for them.
Yeah, it's a really interesting to see that the potential use in so many different areas. It certainly does seem like education is one of the most profound, certainly a realm that's ripe also for disruption in many ways. I wanted to also ask you, as somebody who I know has a very broad intellectual diet, anything you've recently read, watched, and/or listened to that you recommend to peers?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I feel bad because I've been doing a lot of like AI talks. I'm going to start with an AI book, but then I have another book too. But the first is Ethan Mollick's Co-Intelligence. So this is one that I read again over the break, but I think Ethan is incredibly smart. Another one, and this is me just being a nerd, but I haven't read it yet, but it's on my list. It's The Science of Rapid Skill Acquisition. It's not for violin, but for other stuff. I have this odd habit of getting into hobbies. So like surfing is something I've just gotten into. Maybe it's a midlife crisis, but I have a surfboard back there. So yeah, The Science of Rapid Skill Acquisition. Maybe I can get some help getting up on that surfboard.
Well, thank you for those recommendations, Don. And Don, thank you so much more broadly speaking for a really phenomenal conversation. We've covered a career here that in many ways has walked in lockstep with the tremendous advancements that have been happening in data and analytics, now spanning to artificial intelligence generally and generative artificial intelligence more specifically as well. I really appreciate you being so generous with both your time and your insights.
I appreciate it. Sometimes I feel like I'm Forrest Gump with respect to data and AI. So thanks for letting us chat about it for a little bit.
A great pleasure.